Okay, welcome back. On the Shnayim LeYom, I think you're up to 40s. You're in the 40s, I think, in Tehillim, if I'm not mistaken, or in the 20. I think you're in the 40s.
50s.
So basically,
No,
which
we're
is
in the 50s. No, we're
50s, but in the 40s, 50s. Okay.
Mhm.
I grew up in the 60s, but we'll get there. But basically, you're in the middle of book two. Now, the main thing I want to do, I'm trying to show you, is how, again, it's not the only thing of Tanakh, but how Tanakh can be seen as a commentary on Chumash. So I'm going to focus on themes from Chumash that the prakim come through. Now, Chumash begins with the story of creation with God's name is Elohim. And book two, Elohim is a star. I don't know if you paid attention to that. Anyone notice that? God's name in book two, Elohim. Big time. Like almost hands down. Anyone notice that? I guess not.
No.
And there's got to be a reason for it also. We'll see. Now, book one, we're all Mizmorei David. That I showed you last week. That was easy to show because either the header, either there's no header with a name, or it's Mizmorei David. And they ended with, I'll share my screen. How did they end? First thing I want to do is just go through the whole unit and see what we have here. So book one ended with Mem Aleph. Bani betumi tamachti, tzivenu lefenecha la'olam. Okay. And then Baruch Hashem ha'yisrael me'olam ve'ad olam, amen v'amen. That's not part of the parak. That's the end. That's the end of the book. Now, look how Membet begins. Put that over there. Okay, it's good. Maskil livnei Korach. Got it, Bnei Korach. And we're going to see the next, I think, from 42 to 49 are Bnei Korach. Now, but there's only 7 headers. You'll see the number 7 and Elohim always go hand in hand for some reason. Everyone know why? Why does 7 and Elohim go hand in hand? Ever since day one. In other words, 7 creation in 7 days is Elohim. Yud Kevavki always goes with 40. But Elohim, 7 in Elohim, everything with nature is always Elohim, is 7. Keep that in mind. You'll see what I'm saying ever since day one, because on day one, God made light. Now, so from 42 to 49, we have Bnei Korach. 50 will be Asaf, and then we'll go back to David. But look at the opening line about how Elohim, I call it, it's the star. Kaya tarog al fikemaim, ke nafshi tarog elecha Elohim. I'm just searching for God. It's a Tzad Nafshi Elohim. There's mirot, there's songs. We're all familiar with these psukim from popular Jewish music. Okay? And from Smirot Friday night. Don't be surprised that I think the rabbis in Sfat came up with some nafshi. Now, and then okay, by the Ele Eskara, remembers the piyut on Yom Kippur of the Ele Eskara is built on this pasuk as well. Kippur, again, Beit Elohim. See the word again, Matishachi nafshi v'temi alaya chuli l'Elohim ki od adenu yeshuot. I think it's probably 10 times in the parak or in the next 2 prakim. And without getting into details of the parak, but also I'm showing you Elohim is the star. Now, Bnei Korach are again the group of Levites that, together with Asaph, that David appointed when he brought the Aron to Yerushalayim. Now, what I'm going to show you in this unit, there's a lot of prakim in the book 2. There'll be a lot of mentioning about good behavior, mostly about prayer to God, about behavior and how prayer and the temple go hand in hand. Okay, now again, Mem Gimel doesn't have a header because it's really part of Mem Bet. And then again, but God's name is the key. But how's it end? Shlach orcha v'amitecha him yinachmuni. Give us your light, okay, and your truth. They'll guide me. Yiviuni ahar kodshecha bishkonotecha. After praying in Mem Bet, okay, that was giving out your whole soul to God. Then he wants God to judge him, okay? And God being a chassid. And then finally, show me your light, etc., and guide me, and that will lead me to the Beit HaMikdash. Mishkonotecha, v'ovel mizbach Elohim, el simchat gili, v'otcha bechinor lim. Here the Mikdash, the place where you thank God for answering your prayers. And mat tishtochachi nafshi u'metemi alai, ochil Elohim ki od odena, yishvot panai belohai. Basically, it's prayer to God, putting all your hope in God, and then ultimately coming to God, to his temple, to say thank you. Then another Bnei Korach Maskil, again, see God's name Elohim all through the parak. And then towards the end, Final one, which we're comes up a lot in davening as well. Memhei, another B'nai Korach maskir, and there'll be a theme we'll see in a minute. The theme of tzedek here. Ahavta tzedek, v'tisna resha al-kei mashachai Elohim Elohecha shemin shosem mechaberecha. Remember Bar Yochai, the song? Bar Yochai. Mashachta ashrecha shemin shosem mechaberecha. Remember from Lag Bomer? There's tons of songs all based on these psukim and Tehillim. Now, this is a famous one also. Kol kvuda bat melech pinima. The rabbis used to have a heyday with that pasuk, don't they? That's their anchor for a lot of the laws. It's not shot in the parak, but it's a nice pasuk to make midrash shimon.
That parak doesn't really seem to fit into that. I feel.
Which one?
That parak, the way the kvod.
It's about Benot Menachem.
Yeah, that parak. I mean, that parak feels like it's not really part of. It doesn't seem.
It doesn't fit with the rest of them. Yeah, it's too much about what do you call it? It's more about feelings, etc., and looks. Okay.
And so you
call it a female mismor, put it that way. But I'm pretty sure it's smack in the middle.
It's just about how beautiful the princess of the king is.
So yeah.
Unless you say it's like a metaphorical, I guess.
Yeah, probably that's the idea behind it. Now, then we go back to good old prayer, and then I want to get to here. B'nai Korach here. This is famous Mem Zayin. When did we say this? The Matzech B'nai Korach Mismor Komim Tikuchav.
Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah. And now, obviously, why we say it in Rosh Hashanah because we are Etafat Kiat Shofar. Now, we read this 7 times, but I would guess 7 times. Don't be surprised. But what's it relate to Rosh Hashanah? In ancient times, the king, once a year, they would take the king from the temple to his throne. Because who gave the king power? In Mesopotamia, the king was given his right to rule and to make laws was given by God. So every year they had a ceremony where it started in the temple, but in England they do something very similar. When they coronate a king, they start in the church, remember, and they move to the palace with the procession, with trumpets and everything. But that was the old Mesopotamian habit. It's a way of showing the people that their king was telling them what to do, got his authority from God. So listening to the king is like listening to God. Now, who are we coronating on Rosh Hashanah? We're coronating the real king. So we're going to have a procession of our king to his throne. So watch what happens. And who's going to be in the procession? We're going to coronate a king. Watch what happens. Kol avim tikuchav, because he's everyone's God, all the nations are clapping their hands and blowing shofar and blowing trumpets. Why? Ki Hashem elyon nora melech gadol kol haaretz. He's the God above everybody. Remember, Melchizedek was according to Elyon. Elyon's God's name, the universal God, who's in charge of all the powers. Now, but this is universal. All the nations coming to coronate the king. Okay. Now, who's going to lead? Okay. We're part of this procession because we're his chosen nation, and we have this leadership group. He chose our nachala to put his throne there. Okay. And Selah ends the first half. Okay. Now, how is God? This Allah Elim B'Torah is not God going up to heaven, but God going up to his throne. Allah Elim B'Torah, God in this procession is going up to his throne with a truah and a kol shofar. That's tigbolet. Understand? God going up, as God marches up towards his throne, he's going to his throne in the Mikdash with what? With the truah and a kol shofar. That fits nicely to Rosh Hashanah davening. We're all going to sing to our God, who's our king. That's Malchiot. It fits beautifully with Rosh Hashanah. Why? He's everyone's God. He's our boss, and he chose us to represent him. His throne will be in Yerushalayim in the Beit HaMikdash, but all the nations are coming together in the procession to coronate him. Okay. Now, Malach Elohim al Goyim, Elohim Yashav Kisei Kodsho. That's God coming to sit on his throne. Okay. The Divyam Nesafu, Am Elohim Avram. Who comes to the royal party, to the presidential ball after the coronation? That's the special nations, the noble nations gathered together, the people of the God of Abraham. Why? Okay? God's one protecting all the land. He's very exalted, etc. Now, if you want a story about how this happens, when they take the king to, I think it's a Menachem Aleph. Let me check real fast if I can find it. If not, we'll skip it. If not mistaken, there's a very similar coronation story in Sefer Melachim when they anoint, when they make Shlomo king. Where's Shlomo king? What happened here? Oh, here we go. This one. Now I need, oh, here we go. I must control my mouse. Give me a second. Okay, we need Bible. We need Kings. Either in Kings 2. No, I wrote that's the wrong parak. There it is. Here we go. Oh, that's his thing. We need chapter 1, maybe. Here. Here we do. The Melech, when they take Adoniah, when they take Shlomo to become king, here. Here. The Melech says, call Tzadok, the Kohen, and Natan Navi. Okay? And the king tells him, take this, the members of the cabinet, take Shlomo, put him on a royal horse, I guess, or on a pirda, and on the king's mule, and bring him to the Gichon, right? And anoint him there by the Kohen. Okay? And then utkatem b'shofar v'amartem yichem melech Shlomo. Blow shofar, make him king. V'alitem acharav u'bay v'yashav v'kisei. Okay? Then follow him. Got it? Now blow shofar, anoint the king. Blow shofar where you anoint him, and then he'll come and sit on my throne. So that's going to be that's the idea, and then they do it here. Here. So blowing the shofar with anointing a king, we see doing here. That's the noise and the singing coming with the king. And then Adoniah, who hears the noise, shofar. So they're coming with a kol shofar to anoint the king. What's this call coming from? And then the news comes to Adoniah that Shlomo was just being anointed. And then, okay, and then they tell him the story. Okay, Begam Yashav Shlomo al Kisei HaMelucha, and then Shlomo comes and sits on the king's king. Anyway, in a nutshell, what's happening in Tehillim Ein Zayin is very similar to what happens when Shlomo's anointed in Israel. So, in case you remember that next year on Rosh Hashanah, while you're counting it 7 times, but the main thing, Allah B'Torah, God's not going up to heaven, God's going up to sit on his throne. But all the nations gathered together, and the theme of Machiot, that he's our boss, but he's everyone's God. And there's a universal anointing of God by blowing shofar, which makes shofar blowing also part of a coronating king, not just a call to tshuva, but also announcing God's kingdom over everybody and that he's our boss. Now let's go back to what we were doing. Back to, I didn't want to do that parak here. We're in Tehillim in Sefaria. No, I wanted to be in Sefaria. Here we go. Okay. Memchet again, B'nei Korach. That's the famous one. That's the Shir Shuyom, isn't it? I think it's, yeah, that's Monday, if I'm not mistaken. Shir B'nei Korach, etc. And yeah, it's all about Yerushalayim and coming to the temple. And counting all how nice the city is. And then the last Mizmor B'nei Korach is we say at the Avahas. Remember? It's about death and life. That's famous. Then we have one Mizmor Asaf. And notice how Asaf's Mizmor relates to the Mikdash. Here. What he says here. What do you call it? It's putting your trust in God in the beginning, like most of them with Asaf. And then Zebach Elohim Todah v'Shlem Elyon Nedarecha. That's you sacrifice to God. Call out to him on the day of trouble, save you, etc. And Rasha, the God says to Rasha, okay, what are you doing talking about me? I don't want you coming to the temple. Okay. But I tell you, you hate getting rebuked. Send me behind. Yeah. And basically he's yelling at the Rishayim who don't deserve to praise God, and therefore they shouldn't be in the temple. You speak about your brother behind his back, etc. Okay. And therefore, Binu Zat Bezot Shlachei Eloha, Penetrof and Metzil, pay attention to that. God only wants to be praised and thanked by those who act righteously. And then, so again, there's imagery of, again, coming thanking God, but only people who are worthy. Now, the famous one is Nun Aleph. And what's going to happen now, from Nun Aleph, there'll be Mizmarei David. If you paid attention, almost all these Mizmarei David are time sensitive in the sense that the header always is taking something in David's life, either a specific event or a general event. So this is the story of Natan, with Bathsheba, with the sin with Bathsheba and Natan coming to him. Now, there's a big argument whether when these events happen, is this when David composed these, or did he compose them in light of what happened, or these were already written beforehand, and this is what he said when it happened? You understand the three possibilities? Either he's a composer, and on the spot when these events happen, he just composes mizmor on the spot, which is hard to imagine. Or it could be this was a well-known mizmor, and this is what he said at that time. Okay. Or that way, it's like this is what be said when in a situation like this. Or it could be in light of this was composed, which I think makes more sense. No, it's in light of this event, when you sit down and write about it, when writing down in your journal about how it went, you compose the mizmor based on that event. So I think that's the most logical one. Or it might have been later by later, psalmists in light of those events of David. But that's already more historical. Okay. Now, what's he doing in the first half? He's asking God for forgiveness. Okay. But he's asking God to clean him from his sins. Remember, he's looking for God to clean him from his sin. He wants to do tshuva. But he's admitting his sins. And then I've sinned to you, etc. And then he's basically doing what do you call it? He's admitting his guilt and showing how much he wants to bring the relationship back. He wants to be cleansed with an ezov. Everybody wants to cleanse himself from his sin. Basically, try to wash out the sin from his heart. Okay, and then he can be happy again. Now, and then therefore hide your face from my sins, right? And wipe away my sins. Now, this is a famous song which people usually sing the wrong way. Remember the song Leibtag? Listen to how Americans sing the song. They sing it Leibtag bara li-Elohim, like making a statement that God created me with a pure heart. Pshat is, this is a prayer that God create for me a new heart. It's not bara but bara. It's not saying that God. It's not saying God created me with a new heart, but he's asking God create for me a new heart, a pure heart. Like in this, like Baruch Nachon Kadesh B'Kibi. This is not a statement, but a tefillah. He's asking God, I was bad. I'm finished. Recreate for me a new heart. Give me a new start. Okay. And Al Tashkein B'Fanecha, we use this for Shema Koleinu, and before Shema Koleinu and on Slichot. Actually, with Shema Koleinu we say that when we open their own. Hashiva this is on the Shech Rach Nediva. Okay. And this biggest line at the end is now that I sinned, I can machzir people with tshuva. I know what it means to sin and do tshuva. Now that I've sinned, I can take my sin and my tshuva and teach other people who've sinned how to do tshuva. So it says I can I call that post-traumatic growth. I went through a difficult situation. I can learn from my mistake, and now I can help others learn from their mistake so they don't give up hope once they've sinned. And then save me from my sin of causing death to people. And then let me think. And then, thanks to the sin with Bathsheba and this mizmor, we have lots of things in davening. Okay? He's asking God to enable him to open his mouth in prayer. Now, in light of this, it's such a beautiful opening for Shmoneh Esrei, because in the context, I don't deserve to be in your presence, but let me open my mouth anyhow, even though I don't deserve. It's a great humble way of opening your everyone knows this pasuk by heart from davening. Most people don't realize it's from Tehillim and the story of David. Okay, now my title was the Tehillim in the temple. Listen to David's hashkafa, where first it sounds he's against the temple, but watch what he does. I can't buy my innocence by bringing you a zebach. In other words, I've sinned. I can't clean myself by bringing you an offering. That's not going to help. I have to do real tshuva. I have to cleanse out my soul. Help me wash out my heart. Give me a new heart. I have to do real tshuva, and therefore you don't need. I can't. Bringing you food is not going to help. Okay, that won't help you. What's a real sevach? Zivchei E-lohim ruach nishbara. Leiv nishbar v'dikei E-lohim lo tivzeh. I think that's probably one of the strongest psukim in Tanakh about what replaces korbanot. That's a broken heart is a real korban. Now, I could stop right here and say, who needs a temple? All I need is a broken heart. No, I need a temple to remember that what God needs is a broken heart. Watch what he says next. So Zivchei E-lohim is a ruach nishbara. Leiv nishbar v'dikei E-lohim lo tivzeh. But a real person has real tshuva, a broken heart, real remorse. God won't will not look at, but will accept. In light of that, Hitiva b'tzvot Tzion tipnei chomot Yerushalayim, as takpot zivchei tzedek ola b'chadel as yalo mizbecha chaparim. He's not saying he's not saying tshuva replaces korbanot. He's saying tshuva is necessary for korbanot to work. But I need that finalness. I need the broken heart and the real tshuva. That's the real korban. In light of that, then I can come and say thank you. So he's not dumping the temple. We saw the same thing before in what was it in 650? Yeah, in the previous Mizmor in 50, Mizmor Asaf, that it's Russia. God doesn't want the evil person praising God. Russia doesn't belong in the temple. God wants a tzaddik. But now he's saying when David was or did something bad, he can come back to God only after he's done proper tshuva. The real korban is ruach nishbara. But in light of that, then you can come to the temple, and then God will accept your regular korban. But he's not dumping the idea of coming to the temple and bringing sacrifices. He's saying the prerequisite is a broken heart to come. Okay. Then we have all these maskel for when Doeg Adomi comes, and we have a whole set of them. A malachat maskel, a mar naval bat naval. Then we have another one about with the zifim. Again, this already when you learn Sefer Shmuel, we have all these different events. This is a general one, but there's no specific event. But the classic for David davening whenever he davens, remember always with all his enemies, etc. Anyway, it's beautiful prakim here, but we're not going to do, of course, all of them in an hour. And again, more Tehillim, more Mizmorei David, and then Bevorcha Bnei Shaul. And then here, one more. I want to get to the important one for this week. Yeah, these are all prakim about that relate to events in David's life. That's going to go all the way to 66, I think, or 65 to Samachay. You'll be doing these during this will be this week's prakim. You'll learn them one by one. Now, I want to get the one that's for time sensitive. Okay, Mizmi Bar Yehuda, and Samach Daled, one more Mizmor David. Okay, these are all nice Mizmorei David, and the Chadim B'Yatel, famous one is Samachay. Now, what happens in Samach Vav? Through Samachay, they're all Mizmorei David. Samach Vav is general. The Masech Shir Mizmor Rilin Kol Aretz, Amru Chavod Shmo, Simach Kavod, Imru Liman Masecha. We have that a lot of Piyutim on Rosh Hashanah. And Imru E-lohim is based on this. Okay. This is universal praising God. And don't be surprised. This is Imru E-lohim. It's a zemer. It's a piyut. We say on Rosh Hashanah, we're making God king over the whole land. Okay. And he goes on. Okay. Now, Samach Zayin, we're going to spend time on. Okay. Look at Samach Zayin and tell me if it looks familiar. Okay. Move this up 1 second. Let me get this out of the way. Just tell me if this sounds familiar. Just tell me if this looks familiar to anybody.
Yeah.
Does it ever come up in davening?
If you're Sephardi every day.
Very good. If you daven Nusach Sfard every day, when? Before Baruch Shama, right?
No, in Mincha also.
And that's what you say in Mincha also. That's Eidot Mizrach. But even Nusach Sfard says it every before Baruch Shamar. Ashkenaz Nusach Sfard says it in Baruch Shamar, and Eidot Mizrach say it even before Mincha. If Ashkenazim say it now for Marv, you know why? Some people add this with Sfirat Omer. Do you mumble something after Sfirat Omer? You make such a big deal about the bracha, you got to add something. So you have Ana B'Koach, which is based on this, by the way. And you have this Mizmor, and then the Ribbon Shalom with the Sefirot things. Now, but you have no idea what this has to do with Sfirat Omer, do you?
Mm.
You see why?
Seven, it has to the menorah, and
And
it's
this is the menorah one, yeah.
Kabbalistic.
Yeah.
Kabbalistic with the 7 things and the
It's not
And,
it's Shuto Shemikra. We'll see in a minute. I'll show you why it's the menorah. Tell me where in Chumash what in Chumash is based on. Elohim Yechonenu V'Yivarchenu Ye'er Panav Itanu Sela. That's the giveaway. Where in Chumash is this coming from? Not word for word, but concept to concept.
Birchas Kohanim.
Yeah, we're in Birchat Kohanim. Yivrachecha Hashem V'Yishmerecha. Who should bless us? Elohim should bless us, right? Yer panav istanu sela, yer panav elecha. So the opening line is based on Birchat Kohanim. Now, does Birchat Kohanim anything to do with the menorah? Who likes the menorah? That's the main job of the Kohanim, is to light the menorah. And that's when they did Birchat Kohanim every day in the Mikdash. Now, what's the symbol of it? Just look on your own. Remember, the first line is just the header. The Mizmor itself has 7 lines, doesn't it? There's pasachet, but the 7 lines of the Mizmor, Elohim Yechonenu. But look at the classic chiasm. Let me make it a little bit smaller. How do I make it smaller? A smaller font size down a little bit. Okay, that should do it. Now, look at you see the chiasm? Elohim Yechonenu Varchenu, Yivarchenu Elohim Viroto. V'dat bes darkecha, eretz atna yivula. Yedu chamim Elohim, Yedu chamim Elohim. That's mamash the same pasuk. And this is the middle. This is the middle one. And just by chance, it has 49 letters. Ask your Kabbalist. Okay? This one's got 49 letters. And that's a central branch. This is 1. These 2. This is a, what's it? Let me do where's my guy? My little toy here. Here. This will be, this matches this, doesn't it? This matches this. Okay. This matches this. Got it? And what's God's name all through the parak? Elohim. Remember? Then Birkat Kohanim, it's Yud Kevavke, isn't it? But this is Yedu Chamim Elohim, because this is universal. And then Yedu Chamim Elohim, of course, is the same thing again. Yivarchenu Elohim, Elokeinu, Yivarchenu Elohim. It's super universal, Elohim, but it's built like a menorah. Now, so there's a famous, let me show you the picture. I have it from here. Let's turn this off and open up this one. Okay. You might have seen these in, let me get rid of the good old drawings. Okay. How to make this smaller. You see this menorah? You ever seen this in Sidurim? So, La Menatseach, Bin Ginot, Mizmor Shir. That's the first line. But we need 3 letters of each one to be the top of the menorah. Got it? And the middle one, we're stuck with 2 in the middle. Then, Yivarchenu, see the Elohim Yechonenu V'Yivarchenu. Yivarchenu, got it? You see what the menorah is the Yedu Chamim Elohim, Yedu Chamim Elohim, the same line. The middle one, but the 49 words, the base, the middle one. And then the base is Beretz Samchem Sela in the middle line. You've seen that drawing before? Now, why, if it's a 7-branch menorah, it's 7 psukim and 49 letters in the middle one, why would we say it with Sfirat Omer? It's obvious, right? The Sfirot are all 7. Remember, we're counting 7 days, 7 weeks. So 7 match number, and don't be surprised, Elohim in 7 ever since day 1. How come everything? What did God make on day 1? Or remember, Yer Shem Panav Elecha? Or is the ability to perceive God, and the whole idea of lighting the menorah is to enable people to see God, to teach Torah. Remember, Kinyan Mitzvah V'Torah Or, and the job of Kohanim is to teach Torah. So therefore, don't be surprised that Samach Zayin we say with Sfirat Omer. So that's on this page. I think it's a Sefer work page, but there's the Mizmor here. How many words in each one? Here, the first one has 7 words, then 6 words, 6 words, 11 words, and then 6, 6, and 7 again. But this one has 49 letters. Okay, what's this stuff? Oh, that's some. I don't know what that's from. Here, that's another version of the thing. It's the same idea, but more Kabbalistic. But that's there's all these different drawings of it. You can find it. Just do a search for it online. AI can tell you how to find it also. All right, so that was our little journey to Psalm 67. When else we stayed, if I'm not mistaken, Yekis, and a lot of people sing it Motzei Shabbat before Marv. Remember? Anyone? That's I think it's a Yekin again. But it's very popular to sing Motzei Shabbat. Even
also it's also Teimani, I believe.
Teimani also do it?
I believe so, and I've told there's similarities between the two, and people talk about how if they have the same tune, it means it comes if they were so separate
very
for so
ancient,
long.
yeah. If Teimani and Yekim have the same tune, that's something ancient, or someone was copying from somebody because they liked it so much. And then I think if I'm not mistaken, I think we do Kiddush Levana also, but maybe not. No,
Yes.
I don't think we do a Kiddush Levana, but we definitely do it Shvirat Omer. That's for sure. Now, Under V'Koch also is 42 letters, maybe 49. It depends if you add the pasuk at the end with Baruch Shem Kvod at the end. But Under V'Koch has a similar. That's also relates to 7 times 7, or at least 6 times 7. Okay. Now that was Samech. That was Samech Zion. That was Samech. Yeah, we're back to the Psalms again. But that was the famous one that pays to know about. But notice again how Elohim is a central theme in all these Mizmorim, and they're all Now, if David's whole song and whole approach is finding God in nature, remember, as opposed to seeing God with big miracles, but David's ability to find God within nature, then Elohim, the whole idea of Elohim in the 7 days of creation, that God made all the powers of nature, but being able to find God through natural events, it makes sense why Elohim is going to be the star in book 2. Now, I want to focus now at the end of the turn on how book 2 ends, because that's the main topic. Here, this is see something from Chumash again. Where's that coming from? This is singular. Yakum Elohim yafutz oivav v'yunus misanav mipanav. That's an easy one.
Torah.
And that's by Mitzvah Aron. When we travel with the Aron in battle, leaving Har Sinai, we're applying that now to David going to war. Okay. Remember the idea of remember the theme Avia Yitomim V'Dayin Hamanot? You heard that? I think they say that at I think we say it at a funeral. There's something we say at a funeral also. We have that one. But that's a famous saying that we quote a lot. And then okay, so what do you do now? I want to just get to this is a long one. Again, these are all now they're all Mizmorei David, almost to the end. Okay, here Ayin, Masech David Laskir. Again, now I'll start with what Ayin Aleph. Okay, Ayin Aleph doesn't have a header, but it's part of Mizmorei David. B'chashem Chisiti Al Vosher L'Olam. I put my trust in you. Yeah, you'll be my helper, etc. You're my hope, etc. Now, how's it end? There's something here. Oh, here. That's what I wanted here. Here. This is a couple famous lines in here. Here. That's it. Al tishcheni leitzikna kichot chafi al tazveni. So notice we took the first pasuk of what do you call it? We had the pasuk from Shema Kolenu beforehand. That's the last one we say. There's Shema Kolenu. That was in Nun Aleph. Remember, the book began in Nun Aleph. Or the Mizmorei David in Nun Aleph began with Al tashechinu b'fanecha baruch hu tikach mimeni, and now Al tashechinu b'leitzikna kichot kolchi al tazvenu. We move this pasuk from singular to plural. But we had an Aleph, and that was in the beginning, towards the beginning of the book, and now it's just the end of the book. But in Mizmorei David, that was the first Mizmor David in book 2, and this is the last Mizmor in book 2. But that was one important pasuk. And then there's another one, famous one here. Here, V'tzitcha Elohim ad moram asher asita kol milchamocha. We say it's Mincha on Shabbat. after Shemon Esrei, and then okay, and then basically about davening, Tranis Fatayki, Azam Melachad V'Nafshi Asher Padita, idea of praying to God and thanking God for all his help. Now, Ayin Bet is the final parak, the final mismor in the parak, and how's the book end again with Kalu Tefilot David Ben Ishai? Now we're finishing all the tefillot. There's this, I think, it's a summary of the last section from Nun Aleph to here, Tefillot David Ben Ishai. That we had book one with all tefillot of David Ben Ishai. This was the first half of the book was Bnei Korach. From Nun Aleph to here was Mizmorei David. But I'm going to talk about the last one. Now, in Ayin Gimel in book 3, Mizmorei Asaf. Asaf. Then Asaf, Maskel Asaf, there'll be a whole set of Asaf Prakim. That's for book 3. That'll be for next week. Next week, we're going to focus on the last Mizmor of Mizmorei Asaf in Pei-Tet. It'll be really interesting. But I want to focus today on Ayin Bet. Okay, look at the header. We'll try to figure out what's going on. This is the only time we have this, if I'm not mistaken, Tehillim, Li Shlomo. Now, it didn't say Mizmor Shlomo. It didn't say Mizmor David. How do you understand Li Shlomo? Is this by Shlomo or for Shlomo?
Could be either.
It could be either, but who's been talking since Nun Aleph? This whole unit, David, and all events in his life. You'll say about all these Mizmorim are all going to be relating to events in David's life in Sefer Shmuel, correct? Sefer Shmuel, Sefer Malachim. The last thing David does is he anoints Shlomo, and remember we saw that parak about anointing God. Remember with Adlai B'Torah, that was similar to how Shlomo was anointed. Now, what I want to claim is this is a Mizmor written by David, because these are the enemies of David. It's the climax of Mizmor David. It's his hope that his legacy can be passed down to his son. And this is ethical will to Shlomo Melech, who is going to be known for building the temple. Agreed? Shlomo is famous for building the temple. Now, David wants to make sure that Shlomo fulfills the goal of God's kingdom. And tell me in a minute, what's the theme of this parak? E-lohim mishpatech lemelech ten b'tzirk leben melech, yadin amcha b'tzedek v'einecha b'mishpat. Okay? Yistu harim shalom la'am b'tzkot b'tzedaka, yishpot aniyam yoshid ibn Avion b'yitakeh oshek. In the first 4 lines, that was, instead of a header, this gets right to the point in Pasuk Aleph. Most of the line is just a header. Here, the whole point begins in Pasuk Aleph. What's the big theme in the first 4 psukim?
Social justice.
But what are the key words?
You
You can't miss Tzedek and Mishpat, right? Find them later on. They're all through Tehillim, but this is the biggest one. Now, why is that unique to David? Anyone know why that Tzedek and Mishpat is unique to David? I spent all the time trying to show you from in book 2, we have Mizmorei Bnei Korach, who David appointed to together with Asaf. But now with Mizmorei David, all relating to events in his life. But there's one key line in Sefer Shmuel. Let me stop here. Kings. Most of Sefer Shmuel are things that are that sort of bring up into question David's behavior. David and Bathsheba, and David running away from Shaul, and David working with the Plishtim, and that's a topic in Sefer Shmuel, what the book is about. There's only one unit in Sefer Shmuel about how great David is. It's in Shmuel Bet. It talks about his kingdom and how great he is. It starts in Shmuel Bet, chapter 5. That's how it begins. All the Shvatim come to David, to Hebron, and say, you're our king. All the elders come and they make him king of Hebron, and they anoint David in Israel. Then we begin his kingdom. 40 years he was king. First 6-7 years in Hebron, and then 33 years in Yerushalayim. The first thing David does, he comes with his men and takes over Jerusalem. Okay, captures the city, and then he moves his capital. He moves all his and then David knows he's so successful in the battle of taking Yerushalayim and becoming king. Then David knows that God really wants him to become king because he had a lot of question marks because it's been taking so long since he was anointed. Maybe he thought he wasn't worthy of it. And finally, Shaul died, and now all the people finally came to appoint him king. His kingdom was for the sake of his people, not for his sake. Okay, and then we talk about David's wives, etc. And then David bringing the battle with the Plishtim and Emek Rephaim that fortifies the city. And then, and now Yerushalayim is secure. Now that he has the capital city, what's he do in chapter 6? In chapter 6, he wants to bring the Aron to Yerushalayim. Famous story with Peretz Uzzah, and then he fixes that, and then he comes, and remember the whole thing with Michal yelling at him for how he's dancing down with the people. He tells Michal that's why God picked him over Michal. Now, and therefore, Michal's child from David would have been the ideal king, coming from Shaul and David, but because of Michal's behavior, Michal bat Shaul, who didn't agree with the David being like a nobody in front of the people, the ideal child wasn't from Michal, instead it came from Bathsheba. Remember, we need a king, somebody who thinks he's a nobody. I better mute things. Let me stop the share for a second. I want to show you one more pasuk. I'm going to mute. There's some background noise. I'm going to mute, and then you want to talk again, just unmute yourself if you want to talk again. Now we'll go back to... Now, after David brings the Aron to Yerushalayim, in chapter 6, the next step is to build the house for God in Yerushalayim. Okay, and remember, he tells Natan, I want to build a house for God. Remember? And first Natan says yes, and then God tells Natan, slow down, not yet. He then tells David no, he says, not yet, your son, have a son, be a man of peace, and he can build. And David gets everything ready to build the temple. And he's ecstatic that God now promises David his children will be king forever. And therefore David gets everything ready. Your son will build, you can't do it because you're still living, things aren't stable enough to build a temple, but have a son who will take over for you, have established kingdom and have peace. Come Shlomo, to remind them of that, and then your kingdom will be there forever. Okay, and then David gives his whole prayer. Then David has a couple more battles to solidify his kingdom and bring funding for the temple. And finally, at the end of chapter 8, the unit ends as follows. David has now control over Edom and Moab and Ammon, and they're paying taxes. And that's Vayosha Hashem et David b'chol sharalach. David's successful. Now we have a summary line. Vayimloch David al kol Yisrael, vayi David oseh mishpat v'tzedakah l'chol amo. What's David known for? For doing mishpat and tzedakah. And then Yoav is in charge of the army. Yoshaphat is the head of Bnei Akiva, which the Maskir means he's like the Maskir is the Sarapnim, running his government. Saruk and Achituv are the Kohanim in the temple, and Bnei Ben Yada in charge of the royal guard. And David's sons were running his government. Kohanim not in the temple, but his advisors to the king. Now, but the key line is here. David's summary is like, David was known for doing mishpat tzedakah l'chol amo. That's what makes him king over everybody else. That's what makes his kingdom eternal. In case you don't believe me, we can quote Jeremiah, who's a pretty bona fide prophet. And before the temple is being destroyed, what can save the kingdom and the temple? Yirmiyahu says in chapter 22, this is a generic nevuah. Kol Hashem, go to the house of the king of Judah and say the following: Shema davar Hashem melech Yehuda hayoshev al kisei David. You're sitting on the throne of King David, you and your servants, etc. Kol Hashem asu mishpat u'tzedakah. Hatzilu gazu mi'arasho. Right? Make sure that people aren't oppressed and save people from robbery things. Take care of the orphan, the widow, and stranger, etc. And don't oppress people. Don't take advantage of people. Don't cheat people in business, and care about human life. If that's what you're doing, Masut Tasu, then you can come to the gates of this house. Your kingdom will be forever. You can keep your temple and keep your throne. If you don't listen to me and don't do tzedek and mishpat, you're finished. Okay. So basically, David's known for doing mishpat and tzedakah. And finally, when he yells at Yehoiakim how bad he is, Yehoiakim later is going to die and his son's going to go into exile. Got it? And obviously cares about building fancy houses and building, and doesn't care about human life and paying his workers. So you in competition with the cedars of Lebanon. Your father Yoshiel, according to Yirmiyahu, doing tzedek and mishpat is to know God. All you care about Oshek, etc. But you see this theme in Yirmiyahu of Beit David is known for doing tzedek and mishpat. Just going back to Tisha B'Av, which the rabbi, I'm sorry, before you go to there, he ends with what's going to bring Geula. This makes it Tisha B'Nesser, Yinei Yimim Hashem, Vakimoti David Tzemech Tzadik, Melech Melech V'Skil, V'aseh Mishpat Tzedakah Ba'aretz, B'yamav Tivashal Yehuda. Just trying to show you the theme of Mishpat and Tzedakah is central to Malchut David. You just can't miss that theme. It makes it Tisha B'Nesser. In two brachot, in Tzemech David and Shiva Shabtin for Rishona, Melech Tzedakah Mishpat. And finally, the rabbis picked this haftarah for Tisha B'Av morning. How's it end? In Pasach Chavbet, Kol Mar Hashem, Aytelach Chacham B'Chokmato, Aytelach Gibor B'Gvurato. Remember, Bashrokim Bezot Yitela Mitela, Haskel B'Yodoti. Come to know God, Ki Ani Hashem, Oseh Chesed, Mishpat Tzedakah Ba'aretz, Ki Be'elech Hafatzti. Knowing God doesn't mean knowing philosophically, or theologically, but knowing God, knowing what God wants from you. God wants you to do Mishpat and Tzedakah, and therefore knowing God is doing Chesed, Mishpat, and Tzedakah. That's Yirmiyahu's big theme, cover to cover. That's why we lose a temple and lose our sovereignty and we're thrown out of our land. So why did I make a big deal about that? If all these mizmorim are events in David's life, the grand finale is David passing on his ethical will and legacy to his son, the hope that his son is not going to be like his father. Now, he wants Shlomo to be a man of peace, not a man of war, which is exactly Rit Kohelet. Remember, there's time for war and a time for peace. And that's why his name is Shlomo, to remind him that you have to be a man of peace. And to focus on those, I fought battles I had to fight. We had enemies. David had to fight war. There's a time for war and there's time for peace. David can't build the Mikdash because he's living in a time of war. Wars that had to be fought. His son can build a temple if he focuses on peace and solidifying what his father did, but doing a nation doing Mishpat and Tzedakah. There's just one last proof that it actually came true. We'll see in a minute. And later in the book of Kings, when the Queen of Sheba comes to visit, after he answers all the riddles and gets the royal tour, what's she say on her way out? She praises him, you guys are so praiseworthy, etc. And Malchat Shva says, remember, Bakash hears the name of Shlomo, all in the name of God. She comes to Yerushalayim to check it out. And her final line is that God, your God should be blessed, who wanted you to become king over Israel. There's a foreign worker, a foreign king, a queen, a wealthy queen comes to visit, and what does she see? She perceives, here's a nation doing tzedek and mishpat. Now, this famous line, the famous story of Malchat Shva, Queen of Sheba, is all based on Tehillim 72. It's not Stam a Perek in Tehillim, it's the last Perek of Book 2, and the last Perek of events in David's life is the essence of David's life and David's legacy. That's why I spent so much time on it. Now, what's he saying? The Shlomo, here God's name again is Elohim. Don't be surprised in this unit in Book 2, that God should help you do Mishpat and Tzedakah. You and the king, you should judge your people with tzedek and the poor people with mishpat. Let the hills be alive with the sounds of righteousness. Judge the people. Now, I'll hear, what do you call it? You should be seeing like from the morning, from the sunrise to sunset, etc. People should be able to see your righteousness. Your greatness should flow like, what do you call it? Like rain. Just like remember Gim Shirat Hazinu. Yarov Kamatar Dikhi, Tizav Katay Martik, Rivim Adledesa. You see the analogy to Shirat Hazinu, I hope. Yifrach B'Mav Tzadik V'Av Shalom Ad B'Yirech. So basically, this righteousness should just shine and dwell, and you should go from sea to sea, right? From river to river, to all sides. Okay? Now listen. Who should bow down to him? People from faraway lands should bow down to him. His nation should basically should give in to him and appreciate who he is. Who's going to come and visit? That's what happens with the visit of the Queen of Sheba. Tarshish is Tarsus, the big port city up in Turkey, but that's why boats that do trade all the way to Tarshish are called Oniyot Tarshish. Like that's what Yonah takes a ride on. But kings from far away are going to bring him presents. Everyone wants to make treaties with him. Why? Listen carefully. All kings from all nations are going to come and serve him and bow down to him. Why? Not because he's so rich and powerful, rather, בתוכם מכסתי גם נפשם, בעיקר דמם בעיניו. Israel's kingdom would be powerful, strong, what do you call it? Economically super successful and prosperous, but will be known for what we do with our wealth. With our wealth, in other words, how we manage our wealth, what we do with our wealth, what we do with our wisdom and our high tech, using it to help those in need. We won't only be known for how strong our economy is and how strong our army is and how wealthy we are, but rather what we do with our wealth and what we do with our strength. Again, this is the vision of the kingdom of Israel, and it's that vision that's when we pray for Malchut David. That's what we're praying for. Again, even if we don't have someone from the genetically from David, if we have a government and have sovereignty and can use our government to follow this model, this is the model we can build government from in a real religious Zionist ideal. Okay, and then people bring him gold from far away. Okay, to pray on his behalf, to bless him every day. That's what happens, and then there'll be prosperity in the land, etc. His name will be there forever, ever. And now, where's this coming from? Beit Baruch Bo Goim, Beit Churbo Kogim Yashua. Remember V'nivruchu Kol Goy Haaretz, that thing we saw last time as well. I'll see what it's coming from. And then we have the concluding lines at the end of the book but we say at the end of the book has this Baruch Hashem Ha'Yisrael Levado, V'Shem Kol Malchuto L'Olam, ultimate of God's name. And then here, now again, that's the ending of Tefillah David Ben Ishai. This is like the culmination of it. Now, where's this all going back to? The same thing we saw last week, if I'm not mistaken, at the end of, did we do that last week? The pasuk in Bereshit, where are we? Let's just go to regular Chumash. Remember we saw everything was in 1818 in Bereshit? I think we did this with, in light of Tetvav. But here in Bereshit chapter 18, right before the story of stone, remember we had Avram Zachnasat Orchim with the guests and the news of the birth of the son. And before God shares with Avram this decision-making, whether or not to destroy stone, what's he tell him? God said to himself, can I hide from Avram what I'm about to do? I'm about to make a decision about stone and I have to bring Avram into my cabinet meeting. Here's the big line. Avram will become one day a great nation. Remember? And he'll bring blessing to other nations. That's what we just related to. Because I came to know him, ki dativ. That's the reason God picked Avram Avinu and is giving him a child named Yitzchak. He has to teach Yitzchak, to teach his children and their children that we have to follow the family tradition to keep the ways of God, Derech Hashem, to do tzedek and mishpat, in order that God's vision of being a blessing to other nations will come true. So this vision in Bereshit and the goal of God choosing a nation, the purpose of that nation, to make a name for God and how we become a blessing to other nations, all was centered around this pasuk here, and is finally fulfilled in the Malchut of David, and it reaches its fruition, I guess, in with the story of Malchat Shva. But chapter 72, the end of book 2, the Mizmor of David, the Shlomo, is exactly that thing. Hope that's clear. But that's what I'm saying. That's why I made such a big deal about the end of book 2 and how it ends. The end of the book is like, in its context, it's just fabulous. It's not just another parak in Tehillim. It's like probably one of the most important parakim in Tehillim. If we're looking for something with meaning today, once we've returned to sovereignty and we have a government and we have a nation, what we need to be known for. Now, one last line about blessing. We talk about blessings a lot. Remember? Tell me if this rings a bell from something from Chumash. This is my last, I call icing on the cake. He talks here about the sun and the moon. But this line right here, does that ring a bell anywhere in Chumash? That other kings will bow down to us, other nations will serve us? Have we ever stuck in a shul on Mosai Shabbos that Binom is not enough and they add more? You ever read by
Yitzchak to Yaakov.
Very good. Which bracha was it? Oh, you made a great mistake. You made an awesome mistake. It's great. You'll see what you just did. What?
I'm trying to remember the pasuk, but
it's Vayiten Lecha. V'yiten lecha elim mital shmoim shmoneres v'rov dagam mital
Yeah,
she'avdu
I was reading I was recalling that, but I did.
But you mixed up with something awesome. You see what you mixed up with. You're onto something big. You didn't realize it. Watch what happened. I have a source somewhere. Oh, yeah. You said it was Yitzchak's bracha to Yaakov. It was Yitzchak's bracha to Esav that Yaakov stole. Remember? It's the bracha he wanted to give Esav, and Yaakov got it, which bothered Ebenezer to no end. Watch what Ebenezer does with this. This is here we go. Why did I have it here? This should be it. Yeah. Okay, brings it. This is part of a different share, but here's Yitzchak's blessing. Remember, this is a blessing he wanted to give Esav, and Yaakov stole it. Right? Okay. God should give you prosperity. Okay. In other words, the first blessing is for prosperity. The second blessing is for sovereignty. Right? You should be a rich man, and other nations should bow down to you. Yabdu chamim, and yishtabchu chol umim. But but within the family, you should be the gvir, like the senior partner to your brother, and the children of your mother should bow down to you. Those who bless you should be blessed, and those who curse you should be cursed. Okay, that's like Avkat Avram Avinu. Now, Ebenezer is bothered by how could Yitzchak make a mistake like this? How could he give it to the wrong son? So he's saying as follows. I'll make a long story short. He says, if this was if the bracha is nevuah, how could Yitzchak make it wrong? He's a navi. Okay, how can not know? So he says, Menachem Beinai Ebenezer says, Shebirchat Navi came tfilahi. Okay, B'Hashem Shemat Tfilto Ki Ikar Zot HaBracha Al Zaram. I'll explain what he's saying in a minute. He's saying like this. Wait, am I sharing my screen? I'm not sharing my screen. Why don't you tell me I'm not sharing my screen? Sorry about that. Here we go. Okay. Now you see my screen, don't you? Okay. So here, this is the blessing in Chumash, right? That God should bless you. Mital Shemaim. By the way, if you ever do Vayiten Lecha in your shul, know this. It's a collection of all the brachot of Chumash, and then from here, from Breshit, Shmot, the brachot from Tachot, all through Devarim, and then all the brachot of future nevuot in Navi. It's like a collection. It's just jumping from topic to topic, but it's like a collection of all the brachot in Chumash, and then all the ones of future redemption in Navi. It's like really cute. It's really long, but it's a really nice collection. Now, if I was giving a final one time, I would say just take that prayer, and you have to find where each one's coming from, and see if they can, figure it out. Now, but again, this is prosperity, and this is sovereignty.
Oops.
We're frozen.
I think we lost him.
Maybe the time ran out.
I don't think that's it.
And also, it still says 11 participants, which is what it said for a while. So he's technically still here.
He's gone. Rabbi
All
Leibtag.
right. Bye, everybody. I think we're done.
Maybe someone should send him a message though, so he knows we lost him. Or you think he'll
I think he
figure it out?
probably knows. He probably
Okay.
knows.
Okay.
He should sign back in, I would think. But
Mhm. Maybe he's having technical issues.
yeah, maybe he can't.
Mhm.
There he's coming now. You're muted. You're muted.
I can't see him actually.
I can see.
I can only see you.
Rabbi, you're muted.
Now you hear me? Then you don't.
Yes.
Now you hear me. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now we
Now you
don't.
see me. Now you don't. Okay, good. Sorry about that. Murphy's Law. It's everywhere. Okay, I'll go back where it was. Yitzchak is assuming that both children are going to be chosen. He has no reason to think otherwise. The question is who's going to be the leader of the family. And therefore, Ibn Ezra says Yitzchak's blessing is not who's the only one, but rather who's the family leader. And therefore, the family leader, he's assuming Esav is the family leader because he's born first. But he's not deciding who's the only one. He's deciding who's the leader. Only later, God decides only one of them is chosen. Rivka knows that. That's the whole class in Sefer Bereshit. Because he's assuming this is a blessing of leadership, it's a blessing about the nation, you should be the leader of the nation who's prosperous, wealthy, who other nations bow down to. Within the family, you're the senior partner, but as a nation, other nations should bow down to you. Got the idea? But according to Ibn Ezra, Yitzchak's blessing is not a blessing for a specific son, it's a blessing for the nation and for the leader of that nation. It's a blessing of leadership. You should be wealthy in your leadership, and you should lead a nation that other nations look up to and bow down to out of respect, not because of power, but out of respect. And within the nation, among your brethren, you'll be the leader, you'll be the leadership tribe, but you'll be a nation other people bow down to. That's the Yavdu Chamim Yishchavu L'Umim. That's our national goal of other nations respecting us because we're being a blessing to them. Within the family, the other brothers will bow down to you. Now, Yitzchak was hoping that would be both children, but Esav would be the leader. And that's why Yaakov thinks I should be the leader, and that's why he tries to buy the Bechorah is not the only one. Bechorah is the leader of the family. It turns out only one's going to be chosen, and Yitzchak's blessing is put up for another generation, and Yitzchak's blessing later becomes Yosef's dream. You didn't get that, did you? What's Yosef's dream? What's he dream of? He has two dreams. One is we're all in the field, we're all wealthy, but then the sun and the moon bow down to him and the brothers. Remember? There's 11 stars. Who knows 11? Remember? There's 11 stars bowing down to Yosef and the sun and the moon. So who's the sun and the moon? Mesopotamia and Egypt. In other words, Yosef becomes what Yitzchak thought Esav would be. In other words, Yaakov is going to have 12 tribes. One tribe is going to be, Yosef will be the leadership tribe, where his brothers, the brothers will bow down to Yosef, but there'll be a nation that other nations bow down to and full of wealth. So Yosef gets his wealth later in Egypt, remember? But who bows down to Yosef? All of Egypt and all Mesopotamia. The sun and the moon, because the sun, remember, is the Egyptian god, the moon is the Mesopotamian god. They have a lunar calendar, they have a solar calendar, and the brothers bow down to him in the story. So that's how Yosef figured out the dream. It took him a while. He had to get his doctorate in divination after he saw Pharaoh's dream, and it took him a while to figure it out. And the brothers didn't understand because they thought the father and the mother they weren't in my share. Anyway, they what I'm getting at is that if that interpretation is right, that Yitzhak's blessing is for the nation, then the Mizmor is just awesome. If we go back to the Mizmor, we're in Psalm 2072, right? So what do you call it? We'll be doing Mishpat and Stakah. That's the theme from Avram Avinu. The blessing that he has to give to Yitzchak. Yitzchak is, remember, Avram got that blessing to pass down to Yitzchak, doing Tzedek and Mishpat. Yitzchak is blessing that down to his family, hoping that it'll be Yitzchak, it'll be Yaakov and Esav doing it together. Intends it's only Yaakov in the end, and Yaakov has to give it to his children, where Yosef will take that leadership position. And then later it switches now to Malchut David instead. But the idea of Shemesh and Yereach, V'yiruchem Shemesh lifnei Yereach Dodarim, that's the Shemesh Yereach Mishtachavim will be there. And Mishtachavim L'chom Melachim Kom Yavdu. So you see in this Mizmor, Yitzchak's blessing, and later Yaakov in Yosef's dreams are coming true later for the nation. And that's David's dream and ethical will for his son. And then we have the ending of the book, and that'll make God's name great. But if this is we're doing, that'll Baruch Shem Kod Machuto L'Olam, that'll sanctify God's name. If that's in Balkom Shivchar Shem L'Shaken Shmo Shem, if in the temple that's how we're acting, that's our kingdom, then we'll fulfill our goal as God's people. Anyway, we're a little overtime there, but I want to share with you the ending of the whole purpose of the show was to get to 72, remember my whole theme is how Tehillim reflects themes of Chumash. So you can't, I think that put icing on the cake on that one. Because you can't appreciate how awesome this book is if you understand chapter 1 about light, and in the 7 days of creation, what God's name is E-lohim, and how God's going to intervene in history with Brit Ben Abtermi, give us sovereignty in the land, but in order to do tzedek and mishpat, which is the underlying reason why God picked Avram in the first place. So all the themes of blessing come true, and then that's Birchat Kohanim behind it. The idea of being a blessing is being able to give light to other nations to keep the Torah. Alrighty, okay, we'll stop here. Have a good week. Next,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'll let you know for next week. It'll be a one-time change, and then we'll decide something permanent later on.
Great.
Okay, have a good week,
Thank
everybody.
you. Thank you
Good
very
talk.
much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.